Down Under Sigmar with a special guest, a very special topic. I have, as usual, my co-host, Liam the Shadow Hammer. Liam, how are you, good sir?
I'm great. Just a bit sleepy because it's early in the morning for me, but I'm good. Really good.
Yeah, this is a little bit different, this time zone. Normally we do this on a Wednesday, but our special guest, obviously when we record, would be hard at work. Unfortunately, doesn't do enough printing to pay the bills to make it a full-time job, so we've had to move it a little bit late. But your weekend's going so all right so far, Liam?
Just started. My weekend's Monday, Tuesday, so
so you're at work.
today's actually work. So I'm going to be at work in about 2 or 3 hours. So it'll be sweet. It's gonna be great.
Well, we'll make this a productive and fun conversation. But before we get into that, I want to introduce 3D printing god, a guru. Mate, that picture that who made it for you recently? You've got this amazing Twitter picture.
That thing is hanging right there now.
All right, so our guest is Anthony, or you might know him from Twitter. A lot of his 3D printing. If you are on Twitter, I don't know if Dave has been putting NashCon pictures up on Instagram as well, but Dave has been doing a lot, if not all, of the 3D printing for NashCon, which had amazing tables. I am super jealous. But Anthony, you are a printing guru, and my God, how are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. I don't know. I'd say God, but I fumble my way through enough.
You are the deity of 3D printing and all that is filament. Every time I unroll a roll of filament, I pray to the gods of Anthony to bless my filament, my PLA, in order to bless its smooth transition through the nozzle and onto the bed.
Very nice, very nice.
I just made that up.
Works out for you.
I just made that up, but that made sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that, but go for it.
I may start doing that now to guide smooth transition onto the bed, but. We are going to talk about 3D printing, and the reason for it is there are some good resources on YouTube and the likes. Not a lot of them really focus on the wargaming side. Certainly, there are a lot of different uses for 3D printing, and wargames is definitely one. And I wanted to get Anthony on the stream to have a chat around all of the things that he's learned, hints, tips, tricks, and even a lot of the questions around like, how do I get started in 3D printing? So I think this will be a great resource, whether you're watching this live, whether you're watching this on replay. I think, Anthony, you've got a lot of good advice. Liam, you have been watching this from afar, certainly painting my printing as we lead up to Sydney GT. So I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. Well, I hope you have a lot of questions. Otherwise, this will be a very quick stream.
I got a few questions. Be good.
Anthony, are you ready?
Yeah. I'm always ready.
Awesome. Born ready.
Born ready.
Before we get into the topic, we recently launched a Patreon, and I just want to give a shout out to some of my special patrons that are really helping make this channel be great. So shout out to all of these folks here, my assistant coaches, the talent scouts, and the nutritionists. So hopefully, these guys are really appreciated, and thank you for that. So this is the first time I've got a shout out like this. So hopefully I made sense. Cool. So how's hobby been, guys? Have we played some games recently? Are we building some models? What does the world look like for you, Anthony?
Played games, yeah. Just came back from NashCon GT, which is over in Nashville, Tennessee, the heart of America, run by David Griffin. Fantastic event, and that's the impetus of why I bought my 3D printers and started printing terrain, was to help support him in that event and the friends I have over there. So, yeah, that was amazing. And now I'm just continuing the print to start for next year, and because it never ends, as you'll know. And I've got a small one-day event I'm running tomorrow in my local area in North Carolina. So we'll have some 3 games of fun there. And then I got to get figuring out what I'm going to do for my next army, because I'm getting bored of Stormcast, and that Free Cities of Sigmar book is really starting to pique my interest.
So I just picked up yesterday my good friend Dave McElroy, an old friend who I've played Warhammer with since 4th edition, very big Dark Elf and Death player. He just came over from the UK. He's going to be playing at Sydney GT. He's down for a wedding, and he brought me back some Forge World models, including the Forge World Empire Swordsman. So I have 40 of those Manus blades that I'll be painting up for CanCon. in preparation for Cities of Sigmar. So I am pumped. Liam, what's going on with you, mate?
I built some trees, more trees, a lot more trees. Yeah, I built trees, a lot of trees, and then I've started painting some guy's terrain. So
Some guy.
Some guy, and then I've played. I think since last time when we had a show, I think I've played now 6 games of Sylvaneth now with the new book, and the only person who's really beaten me is Dan Brewer, and it's getting really annoying. So yeah.
We'll have a game. We'll have a game. We'll see how you go.
I'm getting practiced with for CanCon already, which is so weird to say. Like, it is so weird to say I have to get ready for CanCon, and that's like in 5-6 months.
Yeah, just over 5 months. So
just over 5 months, and then yeah, it's gonna be good. Yeah, that's my hobby so far. What about you, man?
Terrain, and I was at Brishammer last weekend. So I've been traveling a lot for work, and I'll be doing a little bit more travel at the end of this month. Which has really taken some time out of my tournament prep, which is killing me. But something that is on the cards for my subscribers and people who are watching this show is I've started writing basically a Get Started to Age of Sigmar series. So I'm currently 22 pages in with this document. It's going to be turned into a series of videos. I don't know when, but I really want to go absolutely back to basic, because I've been talking to a lot of really new players who have just gotten started. They're like, look, this game is really confusing. I don't know how to do it. One guy told me it took him 8 hours to play a game because every time they had a challenge, they'd have to go and look for videos. They'd look for, FAQs, and they were bouncing around between books and trying to watch bat reps and trying to understand parts of the game. So I think I'm going to try to tackle, maybe with some collaborators, I don't know yet, but I really want to go to an absolutely get started kind of series and then kind of build that muscle. So I think it's time for me to go back to my roots when I very first started this channel, which was about, the bare basics of getting started on Sigmar. And that's the challenge I'm probably going to start taking on after Sydney GT. So
Sick.
Yeah.
Sick.
Plus I'm traveling. I can't really paint. So it's a good way to spend some time.
Yeah. Nice.
So if anyone has any questions or thoughts around what that Get Started looks like, or how they've introduced a player to Sigmar, I'd love them to go in the comment section and chuck down their advice, their thoughts, their opinions, the questions that are really coming up. I know I had one particular person say to me, I don't understand how the Grand Alliances work. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, let's break down, how a Chaos versus a Slaves to Darkness works, and the pros and cons. So that's just one example of people like going, well, how do these keywords work, and what does an allegiance do, and how does the artifacts work, and then adding those layers onto the onion. And I think us old school people who started with those technically 4 pages, we've kind of grown over time. A new person just gets all these books and is like, what do I do?
Yeah, it is overwhelming at the moment. Like when AOS 2 came.
Yeah.
And it was like 3 or 4 books you had to buy almost. Like the core book, Malign Sorcery, and General's Handbook. And I swear there was another book. Oh, and you got your Battle Tome that you have to carry around. So yeah, like
Anthony's nodding.
That is my one criticism of the game, is you have to have a bunch of resources. Now, it's nice because GW is good enough that you can put them right on your phone and reference them relatively quickly. But having to carry 4 books around is a little tiresome, and reference 4 depending on what it is.
I've given up carrying the core book because that book's way too big.
It's also, for most times, way useless, in all honesty, for general play.
Yeah, I hire Sherpas at my events now, so I just get somebody to carry the books and like the big tomes, like the olden, monks.
Is that what are you saying? Me as like your TO? Is this what I'm doing? No. Just carrying that around?
You can if you want to. You can be the scribe. But
he's hired a pack animal to follow him around.
I it's a great way to bring animals inclusion. I don't know, we're going on a weird tangent, but that's what I'm doing. I'm building up for Cities of Sigmar. I've got Sydney GT in 5 weeks, and I'm printing terrain and trying to build the Get Started series on Age of Sigmar. So lots going on at my house.
Luscious. We have
the beard. Liam went.
It's awesome because you have like the same gray going on with the center strip black like me. This is.
I'm probably a little bit younger though. So I've got more grays.
Yes, I almost had the exact same beard. It's really weird. It's really weird.
All right, I'm going to move along. We got a lot of questions to go through on this. We're going on a weird tangent.
Sorry.
I enjoy it. No, this is great, but it's a weird tangent. And yeah. So a couple of quick shouts. There's been some really good content coming out of the Age of Sigmar Australia community. I know Measured Gaming have just put out a couple of bat reps as well as a podcast. Doom and Darkness has just put out Doomcast 3 or 4, and I'm a guest on there. So definitely check that out. I did get to taste Doom's bath water, which was delicious.
Don't want to know. I'm good.
I'm gonna leave that there.
Yep. Better just move on from that. We'll just keep rolling.
Next.
Heralds of War put out a podcast. Check it out. All the guys are normally on the channel. They're good stuff. Check it out. But let's get into 3D printing. I am super excited. This is the fastest we've ever blitzed through that type of stuff. All the intro stuff. We're going to get into the meat and potatoes. We are talking about 3D printing. We are talking about wargaming, and we're talking about how to get started and making the most out of your investment. So, Anthony, I'm going to start us off. What is 3D printing?
3D printing is essentially taking a digital file and converting it into a three-dimensional object via some form of electronic printing, be it FDM style like we use, where it's layer on top of layer of extruded plastic, or a resin 3D printer that still does layer on top of layer, but instead of extruding it, pulls it out of a vat and so on and so forth. A little bit different technology. They both have pros and cons. That's the basis.
Yeah, very much. And I think you can see in the background from me, that's one of my printers. And Anthony's got
one there and one there and one way over there.
Anthony's wife is more forgiving than mine.
No, I just do things and get yelled at and pretend like it didn't happen later.
So when's the fourth one coming?
Yeah, listen, I brought a fourth one home for a day just to fix it for a friend, and I almost had to live outside. It was scary because the third one showed up while she was at work, and I didn't tell her I bought it, and I had it assembled and put on the table and running when she got home. She came into my office, said, "Hi, I'm going to go make dinner." Cool. She came back up to tell me dinner was ready. She went, "What the F is that?" And I went, "Oh, yeah, by the way, that's new." It didn't go so well. So we're going to hold off on number 4 for a little bit.
Okay, cool. Right, because I just see like there's like a nice little gap in the one at the back where you could probably fit a fourth one.
No, that's actually the closet, which is full of my armies and whatnot.
That's all right. Just clear them out and just like...
Yeah, there's literally no room in this office for another printer.
Cool. And
so how
did you up to 3 now?
I'm on 2. I've only got 2. So American Anthony has 3. Aussie Anthony has 2. So I'm definitely lagging.
And I'm trying to convince him to get the bigger ones instead of the smaller one now.
Yeah. The next one definitely will be a bigger one. So, yeah.
Sick.
But why did you get into 3D printing? So you've told us about the process.
Yeah. So I got into it just before NashCon last year. I was at Adepticon, and Printable Scenery was there, and I saw their stuff. And honestly, even before that, a guy who was in the community a while ago, but really hasn't been making much content lately, MC1 Gamer, Mitch, he had bought a Prusa printer a while back and was printing some stuff. And I watched his channel, liked it, met the guys at Printable Scenery, saw their new Kickstarter, loved that stuff. I instantly went home and said, "Honey, I'm going to buy, a printer for myself. I want to do it as a hobby. It'll be my birthday present." She was like, "Okay, fine." So that's how the first one got here. And I kind of then was like, I'm going to print a bunch of terrain because that stuff looks awesome. And my buddy David, who runs NashCon, I was like, I'm going to print a bunch of stuff and send it your way to paint so we can have some really cool terrain on the tables. And he was like, "Do it, I'm in." So that's how it all got started.
Yeah, and funnily for me, that's exactly why I got my first 3D printer, was to prepare for Sydney GT. So last year was my first event. It was a lot of work to build up a bank of terrain using foam and other resources.
Aquarium terrain.
Aquarium terrain. My wife was hating me at one point because I was burning so much. Because obviously during in Australia, when I'm kind of preparing for Sydney GT, it's winter, so I don't want to be in the garage. I want to be in the house. So I'm burning foam with hot wire cutters, and my wife wants to kill me.
You guys have a winter? I thought it was always warm and sunny there.
Yeah. No. I mean, like it's like 20 degrees, 25 degrees. I'm sure we convert it into American temperature, and it's still warm. But the moment it's not 30 to 40, we whinge. We're like, oh, it's too cold.
That's people from where I am now in the southern states of the U.S. It's
I think like a month ago, the UK hit the 20s, and it was people were taking the day off and going to the beach while we're wearing jumpers. But yeah, terrain was the whole thing. I wanted to get into it because of terrain for Sydney GT and to put good quality terrain on my tables. I wanted to find a cheap way to do it because I just couldn't afford to buy 5 to 10 kits per table from the various terrain creating organizations out there. And
also diversity, right? Because you can get a much more diverse table set from table to table when you have the ability to create stuff versus just buying the same GW kit or the same kit from somebody else in MDF or something.
Yeah, exactly right. Like, now that we're playing in the realms, there's just not enough stuff to allow me to play in the realm of fire or metal or, to bring in light. And that's a challenge if we want to try to create this immersion experience and or even thematical terrain that, there are awesome companies that create battle mats, and I want some jungle terrain, or I want some, more chaosy type terrain to go on my lava mat. Well, like a realm gate is only going to go so far. No offense to realm gates, but I wanted something that's a bit more immersive, maybe a bit more line of sight blocking as well. There's not enough line of sight blocking terrain. And that was
fine. We're good.
Yeah, we're fine. Wait till KO comes back into the fold and
just blows everybody off the table.
Let's just.
I got my trees. I'm good.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm good.
Rest on your laurels for now. Good luck to you.
I'm good.
Thanks for thinking of everyone else, Liam, in the hobby. We appreciate your selflessness.
It's okay. Just remember that your trees don't block line of sight for things that fly. KO has plenty of things that fly and shoot. So
but the things that fly are close combat.
Oh, okay.
Enjoy.
So the most common thing you guys both print is terrain, yeah? Or is there anything else that you guys print?
I also do so movement trays. I sell currently. We were talking before the show on eBay. I sell just some giant bases for like the new Corn Dragon, the Dreadsaurian, War Mammoth. Once they went to that giant, 280 by 210, which is literally a sheet of printer paper. I started printing those and selling those, just not even to fund the hobby, but just because people have no way of getting a base that big, really. And then some Christmas stuff for around the house, my wife, my parents, that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'm mostly painting hobby accessories right now. So combat gauges, movement trays. Recently printed off a really cool. So I was one of the people who bought the Games Workshop. Was it the painting mug, that gray kind of cylinder? And I printed off this really cool accessory that kind of wraps around it and holds about 10 paintbrushes. Which was so just like little examples like that, printing off things to hold my paint bottles. Obviously, once Sydney GT's over, I'll get a bit more crazy, a bit more fun. Hell, I even printed off something for my wife's friend's cosplay event where she had like a Sims kind of diamond. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff to print. But right now it's very terrain focused, but I'll get into some sexier stuff post event.
Yeah.
So like if someone like myself wanted to start printing, where would be the best place to start?
Yeah. If you want my opinion, it depends on how heavy you want to get in right away. If you just want to dip a toe in to make sure you like it, start by finding like a municipality, like a public library or something that has a 3D printer where you can go and use it for free, just paying for the time, and print something small to start, because a lot of people don't realize the amount of time that 3D printing actually takes, and make sure that that's something that you want to do. If you know you want to get into it because you want to do terrain or something else like that for yourself, you can get into this hobby relatively inexpensively with something like the Ender 3 from Creality, which is what Coach uses, two behind him. I have one on the side. Even if you want to do large format, my first printer was the one that's back over there, which is the Creality CR10, which is a bigger platform, so I can print bigger stuff. And they've come down in price significantly from what things used to be. Even to go in large format, the printer itself, US, will cost you right now under sub $500, and you can get a roll of filament for $13, and you could be printing tomorrow if you really wanted to, because there are plenty of free files out there at different sites also.
So just to add to that, so you've got your library, or you've got people who organize printing. So I know Seth Cook works at a library, one of our, the Goon Hammer himself, or Goon Boss, sorry. He works at a library which does printing, so they can do it for you and you pay the time. There are companies that are out there who will print for you. So they're a business that purely print, or they sell pre-made prints. And then lastly is doing what Anthony and I have done, and that is investing in our own machine. So my machines have costed me about $500 each. However, I've upgraded those, and we'll talk a bit more about upgrading and getting started down the track.
That's 500 Australian, right?
500 Australian. If you got down to USD, it's probably about 250, 300. But this would be the upgrades as well. So you can buy these stock models, and then you can upgrade them with additional things. And those things have varying degrees of benefits. So it's up to you if you do it at the start or you do it down the track. But
okay, 100%.
And then I guess to what Anthony was saying as well, you've got the files. So you can either design the files yourself, which is very challenging. You can buy them off people, or you can get them for free. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But yeah, that's kind of like at a high level.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we talked about like how like there's different sizes and different ways of getting into it. Like, is there like a top-notch, like high-class brand or anything that like you guys recommend? Like, is there like the Sony of the 3D printer?
Brand is subjective, just like anything else in the world, in my opinion. I prefer the Creality line of printers. They are a great entry-level price, yet what you get is pretty good bang for the buck. Now, saying that, you will have to do a little bit of tinkering here or there. Some upgrades are dang near essential. You have to do them. Some are, I want to do it because a higher end machine has that feature. I can put it into my machine for relatively cheap, and it makes things a little bit nicer, which is awesome, but not 100% necessary. But there are a ton of brands out there that make good printers. Just doing a little bit of research can really help. If I was going to recommend somebody to get a printer, I would recommend them get a Creality printer. Not only because I'm used to it and the price point is good on the Creality, but the one thing we didn't mention before is the community support for 3D printing on like Facebook groups is massive. And Creality, I believe, has one of the largest Facebook groups. There's like 3 that I'm a part of that are massive, where you can get a lot of help and advice and things like that. So if it was me and I was recommending someone to start out, I would recommend a Creality printer. If you wanted to spend the money up front for a little bit extra bells and whistles and whatnot, and then go with a Prusa. But I don't think you need to spend that money personally.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. I couldn't agree more. Apologies for ducking off. My dog is very opinionated with music and didn't like the song Word Up. So I had to mute it.
All good.
What brand's your printer, Anthony?
Creality.
Australian Anthony.
Creality.
I need to go like Aussie.
Maybe just go Coach. It might be easier because we have 2 Anthonys. Or I'll take Tony. So I've gone Creality, and the reason I went Creality was I think value for money. So I guess you've got tiers, right? You could buy really cheap ones for like $100. They're, and they do what they do, right? So, and they're okay.
It's like it's kind of like airbrush compressors kind of thing. If you buy like $100 airbrush, you get $100 airbrush. That makes
For
sense.
sure,
Like
for sure. And eventually you'll probably want to upgrade it later. So was it better off just spending it up front? I think the Creality, in my opinion, was a machine that was high end at a low price point. So for what you spend, which is at $300 to $400, it does do a lot. You get a really good value for money, and that's so much so that I bought two of the same machine. And then I will probably upgrade to another one, which is a bit bigger down the track.
Okay, cool. So what, make those two into one?
No, they're not transformers. I think the restriction that I've got. So Anthony and I have some different machines, and one of the big differences that Anthony has in his machine, in his Creality CRS10 or whatever that acronym works out to be, is that the size of the bed. So if you think of the machine and how it's going to create a piece of, let's say, terrain, you've only got a certain size that it can print on. So the bigger the machine, the bigger the bed. Yeah, perfect example. There's a
you've got a platform that denotes the actual buildable space of your models, and then your z-axis. This one sits like your z-axis is the height of the model.
So the bigger the machine, the more of that bed space you have, and the taller it can go. So you might have seen that I've recently been printing these big high elf or these elven type
Those
libraries.
Towers.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Because I've got a little bit of a smaller machine, it takes me a little bit longer than it would take, say, Anthony. Or for some of those really big pieces, I might have to cut it up and split up the file. And that just takes a little bit more time. So that's the trade that I'm making. While Anthony could just hit a button and it could print for 3 days, 4 days, and print it all in one go, or in a very short period of time. Not a huge difference, but there's a little bit work for me because my bed is not as big. So that's the consideration of when I'm buying, what am I printing for? What's those sizes and how? Yeah, it's a trade-off, right? Like I'm okay spending a little bit more time because that money, basically two of those machines are the cost of one of Anthony's machines approximately.
The bigger one for sure. And it lets you put some more on too for certain prints. Like you were talking, like combat gauges. I printed a bunch of combat gauges so that everybody that came to the event could have a free combat gauge with the event name on it. On the small, the Ender 3, like what Coach has, and I have one, I can print, I think it was, I could do 12 on that machine at one time or something like that. Where on the bigger machine, I could do like 20 of them at a clip. So each time I was doing it, I just get more and more and more. So my total print time is just less, which is nice.
So that's a consideration. If you're going to get started, maybe just a smaller one, because you don't want to drop $1,000 and realize this is not for you. And it can be a frustrating hobby. When something goes wrong, it goes wrong, and there is no instruction manual to tell you pinpoint this is where the problem is. So yeah, but 100% to Anthony. And Tristan Gray asked a really good question, which was, are there ones that have a super high Z-axis? And the answer is yes. There are a whole range of different ones to meet your needs, but I guess it's the price point and finding the bundle.
There's also dependent on how technical you are. I could take, and a Coach could too, if he wanted to take his Ender there, he could essentially get some more extrusions, make the height of it taller, and change the firmware in it to say, instead of being able to print 250 millimeters high, I can now print 700 millimeters high, and it could do it. You would just have to program it to do it. So that's where the modifying of some things get into it. But yeah, you could print super high if you really wanted to.
Yeah. So I think that's the cool thing. Just, without getting into a rabbit hole, there is a lot of different ways you can go about 3D printing. I would start just basics, getting the foundations right before you start going deep in a rabbit hole of upgrades and, investing all of this money. I think that's a trap.
And that might be a question that I saw might come up later, but just to address it real quick, I see so many times on posts, people ask like, well, I just got my printer. What should I change on it? Nothing. Don't change anything on it yet. Why don't you learn how it prints first and make sure you can understand it before you start modifying it? Because 99% of printers out there do not need any modifications out the box to print very well these days.
Yeah.
So spend more time learning your slicer software, which is a term we'll get into in a minute, than modifying your printer.
Now, so we've bought the printer, and now I want to print something. Where do I find the designs to print?
Okay, so you can go to Thingiverse, which is the biggest free site on the internet. It's I'll be honest, it's a half a crapshoot of a site. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you find what you want, sometimes you can't. But it is the largest collection of free files that there is. And you can go in there, search, I want, a tree, and it'll build a tree. I'm printing, a friend wants to run a Corky as a stone horn in an army. So I searched a Corky, found a Corky print, scaled it up, printed him a Corky I'm going to put in the mail to him. So
that's awesome.
Wait, Corky as in the dog?
Give me 1 sec.
Oh, it's amazing. So yeah, so I'll just continue. Yeah.
Corky as in the dog. I printed him a Corky that is the size of a stone horn.
And what's he going to play it as?
A stone horn in Beast Claw Raiders.
That's so cool.
I think it's amazing. I love the idea. He told it at NashCon. He was joking around saying it, and I was like, I can make that a reality, right? Like that's one of the cool things. Not every time something comes up do I say that, but there's a lot of times where people are like, I want to do this, and I'm like, I can make that a reality. I have a printer, and I'm sure I can find a file for that. Yeah. And they're like, really? I'm like, yes, I can print you a Corky the size of a stone horn. Not a problem.
And I can just imagine like an oversized Corgi just like bulldozing everyone.
Yes, it's going to be amazing.
Hashtag my hobby.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Don't kill my buzz, bro.
Okay, cool.
But with Thingiverse, right? Like Thingiverse has everything. I could find parts to a washing machine that's broken, and I need a particular part. I can find parts. Yeah. I can find a bust. So if I want to paint up a bust, there's plenty of bust designs. There are vases, and there's so much craziness out there. Yeah. So it's super extensive, and it's all free. It's legitimately 100% free. So check it out. And that might be a starting point, is to find that free file, take it to the library and print it at almost no cost. Enjoy it, learn it, then actually invest.
Yeah. Yep. And that's so you've touched on the two things that you need to get started 3D printing. The third one would be the slicer software, which actually converts the file that you've taken and turns it into what they call G code, which is what the printer plots out to print. And there's a lot of different settings in there that need to be adjusted and tweaked and changed based on printer. But again, get on everybody does social media these days. And Facebook has great communities for pretty much every printer out there. And there are people that share their settings for each of the 2 to 3 major slicer brands that you can they'll give to you willingly for free in the file section. You just download it, import it into your slicer, and you can be up and printing in no time.
Okay, so the slicer is the where you can modify it, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So that's
before we move off this question though, we've kind of missed a few pieces. So Thingiverse is one spot that you can find these files. Ethan, do you want to throw the other places I can find files?
Kickstarter is a great place. I backed Printable Scenery Kickstarters and a lot of other ones. I know Coach has also. We just backed another one last night. I think it was
EC3D has done 3 amazing Kickstarters so far, and is now doing another one. So there's some really good guys out there who do very affordable terrain. So Kickstarter is amazing.
Fantastic. Patreon. A lot of people have Patreons that if you subscribe to them, once you get into the Facebook groups for 3D printing, there's a bunch for 3D printing for tabletop and whatnot. You get into a group like that, there are people that design the files, and if you back them on a Patreon they're usually not asking a ton of money. They're producing some really nice files, and you can get files from them, which is amazing. You can design your own with the proper software. You could 3D design your own. I have not gotten that far yet. That is something I aspire to get into in the near future, but that's something I haven't done yet. But those are probably your biggest ones. Is free on Thingiverse, Kickstarters. There's a couple companies that are out there that do Kickstarters and also just have files on their website, like Printable Scenery. was it Hobgoblin?
Yeah, 3D Hobgoblin.
That's what it is.
Is it I Lovell? Ian Lovable, I think it is. There's some really good ones.
Like
yeah,
there's quite a few companies out there that have websites, and a quick Google search you can locate some of those where they do some really nice stuff that fits our world, the fantasy, or 40K if you're into 40K, even the 40K world, and you can get files pretty easily.
Yeah, and before we jump on to the next question, I just want to acknowledge the chat. Tristan Gray and Jack from Rerolling Ones are giving us some stick because they say that Anthony and I have the same beard color, almost like we are sharing the same die numbers. Just to make sure people don't believe that this is a requirement to get in 3D printing. No, you do not have to have these little whisk. And big shout out, actually, funnily enough, in the chat, I was literally about to call out this Patreon. So 3D Hexes is someone that I am a big fan of. I've been printing a lot of their stuff off, very Sylvaneth, and he's recently joined a Patreon. So he is definitely one I'm backing every month. So funnily enough, nice to see you in the chat. It was like I summoned you. Good timing, mate. But yeah, there's a lot of cool.
So much. With this show, every time when we mention someone, they literally rock up within like less than a minute.
It's great.
Is ridiculous.
Just
like just say their name 3 times and poof, they're here.
Pops up. But look, honestly, like the file that you use is called an STL. And if a quick Google search STL, put it in Kickstarter, put it anywhere, and it'll just come up with so many files. It's not funny. Yeah. And the great thing is 99% of the time, there's almost no work to be done or very little. And we'll explain why you might have to do a little bit of work. But the work is like 2 seconds of amount of work. And that comes down to the fact that Age of Sigmar or a lot of Warhammer Say games are not a true 28 mil game. So you might find that your resources, whatever you print, are small. So you need to scale it up so it's more reflective of the world you're in. But then again, I might play bolt action that's having 15 mil, so I might have to bring it down. So,
and in all honesty, if you look at a lot of GW terrain, they build a lot of their terrain more to real 28 millimeter scale, even though their figures aren't. So even if you didn't scale things up, it wouldn't look so out of place with some of the other terrain on the table. But I agree with you. I prefer to scale it up a little bit to be more of that 32 millimeter scale that GW's figures are.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I got a printer, I got a file. Now I need to modify it. Is that right? And then I have to modify it. And then what do I do next then? After that, then is there a particular like fulfillment I have to get?
No, so literally you don't have to actually modify the file. The Slicer software converts the STL file into a G code. And that just literally plots out how it's going to do layer by layer and how it's going to print.
It's no different to like save. It's no different like saving a Word document. Like literally you open up a file and then you save as, it's done. Like that's the simplest version of this. So I guess I'm just interrupting. Sorry, Anthony, because I don't want to. I don't want to make it sound like it's too complicated because it's really
not.
You guys are making it sound so simple. Easy.
It is.
It really is. I promise you, I'm one step above a simpleton, and I picked it up in no time. And because it really is that simple. Like, find a file, download it, great. Import it into the Slicer software. Click print preview. It slices it. Click save to SD. Stick an SD card in. Hit print. Walk away. Come back. However many hours later. That's usually what the bulk of my time is.
Yeah. And this goes back to what Anthony was saying about just learn your machine first, because once you understand the foundations, you understand where the errors may occur. You find out once you understand that basic process, it is super easy to do. You might be able to see behind me, there's something on my printer bed. So that is a file that is printing for 48 hours. I literally just press a button, make sure there's enough product in the spool, and I walk away for 2 days and just occasionally check on it to make sure that it hasn't fallen off or there's an error. But otherwise, that's it. And then I come back in 2 days and I pick it up and I paint it and print some more stuff.
And the nice thing is, like, you will have failed prints. It will happen. I don't care who you are. But the only thing you're out when you have a failed print is a little bit of time. The cost of the material is honestly pretty cheap, where even a fail didn't really cost you much.
So you just mentioned that even a fail, it's just time, not much money. So like, what is the ongoing cost of running a 3D printer? So like, I bought my printer off like one of the sites that you guys probably would recommend to me. And now you say there's some stuff that you can do that's for free, like some stuff that you can download for free, or you can buy some. So what is the actual ongoing cost? Like, for example, the filament, I think it's what it's called.
Yeah, yep. So it's filament. So the most typical filament that you'd print with, there's a couple different ones, but instead of going down a rabbit hole of all the different exotics and everything else, I'll stick to one, which is PLA, which is a cornstarch-based polymer that it prints very easy, get great results, and it's cheap. So a roll, which is 1 kilogram, 2.2 pounds for US, depending on where you buy it from and the quote-unquote quality of the filament, can range you anywhere from US $12 to $25.
Yeah.
I usually buy one particular brand just because I've had great luck with it, and it costs me $12.85 a roll, and I buy bulk when it's on sale, so it usually ends up costing me more like $10 a roll, and that will go a long way. 1 kilogram of filament, you can get a fair amount of printing out of, versus the time. Like that print that takes 48 hours, that lower piece that Coach is printing, probably only takes maybe a quarter to just under a half of a roll. So you're talking it'll cost him $5 to $6 to print that lower section, that entire tower, which stands nearly 12 to 13 inches tall. It's about 8 inches in diameter. It's highly detailed on the inside and the outside. Probably total cost for that thing to print in material is $15 to $20 tops. Then you just have electrical costs for whatever you're paying for electric. But 3D printers surprisingly don't use a lot of electricity versus what people think. The biggest thing that uses electricity is the heated bed. And if you put a certain type of surface on your bed, because you can get different ones, you can actually turn off the heated bed after it has printed a certain amount, and then you're using very little electricity to print.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you've got your ongoing cost of electricity. You've got your filament cost. So in Australia, I'm paying about $25 to $30, and I buy a product called PLA Plus, which is a stronger version of PLA. It's a few dollars more, but especially because I'm printing terrain for tournaments, I need it to be as durable as possible. So it's a little bit more expensive, but it goes a long way. Then there's the electricity costs. There's other things that come up, but they're probably the big ones. There's certainly, there's wear and tear, and things break occasionally, and you've got to repair those pieces. Like the nozzles get clogged up at times, and you can either buy a new one or you can clean it. But long story short, like there's like any piece of machinery, there is wear and tear, and you need to replace parts over time.
Okay.
But don't let that scare you, because in all honesty, replacing the parts is fairly simple. While it seems like a complex machine, they're very simple machines, in all honesty.
Can I just jump in and just ask? So Tristan Gray's asked a good question around, do I need to figure out what printer my library has before I go in and print? Anthony, do you want to add anything to that one?
I mean, if they are going to do the slicing of the file, the only restriction you would need to know is like the size of their printer, to know what size file you could bring, what size of a piece you're going to bring. If you're going to have to, if you're slicing the file yourself, then you need more information, because there's some settings that you need to know. If
you bring your file into the library, I'm sure in a matter of seconds. Like, so the software that I use is now set for my machine. So I just got to literally load up that Word document essentially, and it's automatically done for me. So it's pretty simple. Good question.
Cool. This is sounding way too easy. Like, I feel I could do it when I'm hungover, but I feel like that will not go down well.
Once you've set it up correct, it's super easy. When it goes wrong, it's frustrating, because there's probably a million spots that it can go wrong, and it's not obvious where it goes wrong. And over time, you do learn the most common spots where there's errors. To check this. But I remember the first time my machine went down, it was down for a good month because I didn't know what I was looking for. I tried to replace certain parts and that didn't solve the problem. So I was waiting for parts to come in and out. And then eventually over time, by talking to the community that Anthony was talking about on Facebook, trial and error, watching YouTube videos, I found where the problem was. I understand it now. And I can almost say that my printers are running 24/7 for the last 3 months. Because if it does go down, I now know instantly where the problem went, because I took the time early on to learn those mistakes. So that's my advice.
This isn't the next question, but I do see like a large tower behind you, Coach. Now, when it comes to printing those big pieces of terrain stuff, what is the best glue to stick them together?
Yeah,
with that filament.
Also, while my head's bobbed over, you can see a can of hairspray. That's not to make my luscious hair beautiful. I use it on the glass bed to make it stick. And the reason I do that is during the winter when the temperature does drop, sometimes it can, the piece of product that I'm trying to create can fall off. And I wake up in the morning with a spaghetti monster because the filament's been coming out, but it's not sticking to anything. So I use a little bit of hairspray on the glass just so it sticks. And then, like I said, that's been going for 36 hours and it's a small little spatula kind of pops it off. And I know that it's not going to fail.
Instead of using hairspray, I use a certain build material that I stick on top of the mirror and it sticks to that and I don't have to spray the hairspray. But the hairspray is probably a slightly cheaper option.
Yeah, people use more easy. People use clad glue, like the old glue you used in school. Some people use like double-sided like painter's tape. There's a lot of different ways. You don't even have to do it, but it just ensures that I don't get any failures, especially because I've got a tournament in play. I need it to be successful as much as possible. I can't have failures.
Yeah. But for gluing the pieces together, you'd be surprised pretty much any glue you want will work. Yeah. I mean, I use super glue, but pretty much all the stuff I send over to my buddy for his tournament to paint, he uses regular Elmer's white school glue to glue it all together, and it holds just fine.
Okay, cool.
I'm using a stronger bond because, again, it's a tournament, and I'm potentially expecting some other tournament organizers to ask me to borrow this terrain down the track, or at least trying to think about using it again and again for future tournaments. So I'm using something like a higher strength, like a Gorilla Glue, just so it can handle the wear and tear and the transport issues. So
I think you overthink it. I'll be honest. We've traveled with the terrain, four different states in the U.S. and 3 different tubs all the time. David dropped it down a flight of stairs. Didn't have a break.
Yeah, well,
but there's nothing wrong with it either way.
So super glue, I've had no problems with. Other pieces, there are some big pieces that I'm doing, and I think I feel more comfortable using like a Gorilla Glue. But
well, David laughs because when I send it to him in a box, an elephant can step on this box, nothing's going to get it. It's like 3,000 pounds of peanuts and bubble wrap all around it. And he's like, we haven't had one damaged yet. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't. I just feel better this way. So trust me, I'm with you. Better safe than sorry.
Now, so you know how you mentioned this before about when you grab the machine, do you get upgrades and stuff? And you said don't get it immediately. You say learn the machine first, or do you say if the or is there some machines where you need the upgrade immediately?
So that's a tough question because I know my machine, my first machine. I knew when I bought my Ender, the 2 that Coach has, there was one part I was upgrading right off the rip on that because I know it will be an issue down the road. And I can learn that machine as a newer person. No, you don't have to upgrade anything from the start because they are built fine. You can learn them on it. But I guarantee you I know where your first failure is going to be as far as hardware-wise goes and what you'll need to replace it. So I just made that upgrade from the get-go, but you do not need to do that from the start.
Okay. Cool.
There's a couple. Yeah, there's definitely a couple that are beneficial that I would recommend. So the glass bed is one. There's a lot of benefits to it, and it's very cheap. And the second one is the way that the material comes through from that little like ring, that spool, into the machine. It needs a little gear to kind of pull it through. Now, the stock standard one on the Ender 3, for example, is I think it's one metal and one plastic. I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't very high quality. So you can buy a little upgrade that's metal that just increases the success of pulling it through, because if the material is not going through or it's not feeding enough material, certainly your print's going to fail because there's just not enough product, or it's very flaky and thin. So those two ones were quick ones. But since then, I've gone to upgrade more for certain benefits. And after this one, I'll upgrade the motherboard and make it more silent, because you'll notice that Anthony and I have both paused our prints because it makes a little noise. But you can silence that with an upgrade, or you buy a machine that already has that. So it's not like crazy noise, but certainly if I'm streaming here, it would be enough that you guys would hear it, and the chat would be attacking me right now. They're like, shut it up.
Yeah, I can tell you my office shares a room with my 4-year-old daughter, or shares a wall with my 4-year-old daughter, and I have 3 printers going round the clock, and they do not affect her sleeping or anything like that. So the noise, even while it can be a little annoying when you're sitting right next to it, it's not that bad. Like some people make it sound like, if you read some forums, like it's so noisy. No, it's really not. Yeah. My wife talks a lot louder than that thing goes.
So this hobby room is right next to my bedroom, and I'm printing 24/7 with 2 machines. So as long as I just close the door, you can't see anything. So, or you can't hear anything either. So it's not that noisy, but it does make a little eerie noise that may grind your gears. So that might be important for you to silence. And mind you as well, like a lot of the things we're talking about here is this the FMD type printer. Certainly there's the other side, which is for the resin, which for my personal preference, resin is good if you want to printing miniatures. So if you are in the game of either trying to recreate your favorite war game, or you're trying to print things for, let's say, Dungeons and Dragons, there's a lot of cool models. Well, if you want to print Tomb Kings off and you can find those files, I would definitely recommend miniatures being printed in resin. But for terrain, you want to go down this FMD or this PLA kind of route because it's much better. And you'll get much better detail with resin for your miniatures, but you wouldn't want resin terrain. So
it would also cost you a fortune.
It would cost you a fortune.
Yeah, and take you forever to print, because resin printers have a much smaller build volume,
Material costs more.
It's hazardous material too. For the most part, you can't get it on your skin. You have to wear a respirator, wear latex gloves, keep it away from certain things. It does, put off a fume that can be, well, not toxic, sickly to some people. They can't stomach the fumes and whatnot. And that's not to put off resin printing. I've been considering buying a resin printer just for like bases. If I was going to do a base for my miniature and I wanted to print 100 cobblestone bases, I would want a resin printer to do that, because it'll give me a smoother finish and be a little bit nicer. So I've been thinking about buying one and putting it in my garage and keeping it there. But I just, with the most of what I print is always going to be terrain and larger stuff. So FDM printing is the way to go for me.
Yeah, and there's probably one more thing that I didn't touch on what you might use a printer for. So I know a lot of Dungeons and Dragons players or role-playing players, they prefer to play with miniatures on the tabletop, and you can create your own dungeons with little tiles. You can create this stuff, and it's all very modularized. So you can create your own dungeons every week or every time you play, and put your monsters and traps, and there's a whole range of things you guys can do, whether you're a miniature war gamer, whether it's 40K, Sigmar, whether it's Bolt Action, whatever game you play, or you're in that RPG side. So it's got so many value points, it's not funny. And Tristan's asked, do you have to sand filament prints? No, you don't have to if you don't want to. One thing that Anthony and I do, so we talked about the way that the machine kind of creates the file, and it's based on the size of the print. So it basically prints these little layers, and it builds those layers up over time. Now, the smaller the layer, and you can change the size of the layer. The smaller the layer, the more time it takes, but the finer the detail. So the stock standard approach is, I think it's 0.2 of a size. I print around that 0.15 or even the 0.1, which takes me longer, but it just gives me more detail, and you don't see those print lines. But if you did, you could sand it back. You could use acetone to kind of blend or smooth it. You don't have to, but it's up to you. Anthony, any other things you'd add to that?
No, exactly the same thing. Like the lower the layer height, it's going to increase the time tremendously, and you'll get a little bit less of the visible layer lines, which for some pieces could be important. But for most, when you're talking about like rubbled buildings or cobblestone or brick buildings, they really don't affect it much. And you could do some stuff like when you prime it, instead of using an airbrush or something like that to prime it, use a more generic rattle can that's a little bit thicker of a paint, and it'll fill in some of those lines also. And you don't see a lot of it.
There's an automotive rattle can that fills in gaps as well. It's like a gap filler.
It's a high yield or high build primer filler. That's what they use. They spray that down before they block sand a car, and that's a lot of guys use that for like their cosplay stuff because it'll fill in that. You can also, if you have like the Vallejo plastic putty, water that down a little bit, and you can smear that over something, and it'll fill in a bunch of layer lines too.
Sometimes I'll use a lighter, like I'll just burn a little bit, and just because I'm melting the plastic slightly, and then I can smooth it over with my finger. But that's obviously very small places.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So there are some little tricks you can do.
Yeah.
You guys kind of answer this pretty well throughout the show about like when you work out problems, like you say, there's like a community and stuff. But what are the most common issues? Like, what are the top 3 most common issues when it comes to printing? And then, like, how did you find the solutions? And like, how long did it take to get back to printing?
So I would say the common 3 I get is you'll get a jam, which will happen usually in one of 2 places. You'll get something that it doesn't stick to the bed, like a corner kicks up, and then it either completely knocks itself off of the bed, and then you get the spaghetti monster or something along those lines. Thirdly, trying to think of issues I've had. Bed leveling. If you every now and then you'll have to re-level your actual bed, or more appropriately tram the bed. The nozzle rides here, the bed is here, and they need to be in parallel. The first time I had a clog, it took me a little while to figure out what was wrong, because a clog can be caused by quite a few things. And like Coach was saying, the first thing that causes the clog on the Creality printer is not actually like the nozzle; it's the extruder, the actual where it feeds the PLA through. It's a plastic thing; it wears down over time. It doesn't provide enough spring tension, and it can even crack. So you upgrade that to a metal one. It solves that problem. It keeps the filament pushing through properly. You can get there's a hot zone and a cold zone on the hot end. So the filament comes down through the cold zone, hits the hot zone, the melting block, and that's where it melts it to extrude it out onto the table. You get a clog in the throat in between the 2. And then it's just a matter of taking it out. I use a heat gun, heat it up, pull the stuff through and clean that up. Making sure that your nozzle is the proper distance from the bed so that it properly sticks to the bed, or using something like a hairspray, or like I use a material on there designed for gripping to minimize those things. I mean, the communities are great for figuring some of that stuff out.
Yeah, just to add my 2 cents. So with that whole leveling thing, some machines that you buy will automatically what's called leveling, which is basically the distance between the little nozzle to the bed to make sure that there's enough space for the filament to kind of go down and squish, but not enough that is a huge gap. So you want to level. I don't have that, but what I do is I use a generic Post-it note, and you can slide that under the nozzle, and that little the distance of the Post-it note is enough that the filament goes down, and I just pop it on all 4 corners to make sure that it's approximately even. and I get a perfect print every time. The other one that Anthony didn't get to mention, but I'm going to jump into, is you set it up wrong. The most common mistake that I find is people get really excited to build their machine, and they don't build it correctly, and there's a problem with the y-axis or the z-axis because it's uneven, or one of the nuts that you screwed in was too tight or too loose. So it means the degree is slightly off 1 or 2, say, degrees, and that throws off the entire print. So when Clint and Gemma most recently bought their printers, I gave them a YouTube video that talks through every single step and the hints and tricks along the way to set up a successful machine. And that for me has been a critical piece, because that 1 degree can make a huge difference to your print, and you'd never know that your machine's slightly bent in 1 mil. Or 1 degree, because that's crazy. Your eye sees it's perfect, but to the machine, which is all that precision, it screws everything up, and it'll drive you insane.
Oh, definitely.
So that's
cool.
Good question, Liam.
And the last question, right before we go on to the viewer questions, is 1 machine enough? And I feel like this is the wrong question to ask to both of you, because you're both going to buy more, and I can already see in like 2 years' time you're probably going to have 10. So I feel like this is the wrong question. But for someone who's just starting, is 1 machine enough?
Up until a point, yeah. And then you realize you could do so much more with a second machine, and then you could do so much more with a third machine. 1 machine for the average hobbyist, yes, 100%. Cool. If you are going to do something like terrain for an event or something like that, my personal opinion, no, you're going to need a second or maybe even third machine. Or if you just have an addictive personality like I do, yes, you're going to need multiple of everything. So.
Cool.
Yeah, and I agree. I think why are you doing this? If it's for your personal hobby table and you just want to have really nice terrain for yourself, sure, 1 machine's enough. You'll start to find your club mates will start asking you for and actually that's probably a really good point as well, is around sales and things like that. So there is a common, I don't know the exact terminology for it, but you are absolutely able to print off things for your club mates, as long as you're not setting it up as a business for profit. So if you're out there advertising that you're printing things off, like a commercial license, you do need to pay for a commercial license, but you're absolutely able to create things and sell them to your friends within reason. So just if you think about the legality around that, so if your friend's like, oh man, can you print me off some stuff? Well, I'm not a charity, so no, I'm not doing it for free, but I can charge you a nominal fee for the electricity, the fact that I bought a machine, something that's very fair, but certainly not, and you wouldn't want to rip off your friends anyway.
No, I am known for being way too generous, and I do a lot for free, but that's just because I'm touched in the head. And people have offered to pay for a lot of stuff, and you're right. Your friends will start coming out of the woodworks, but other people will also, and that's when it starts getting, well, I could do some of this for them to help them out and do my own thing, and now I'll need more printers.
Yeah. And so to answer your question, Liam, it depends on your reason. If you're doing it for a games club, maybe 2 machines. If you don't have a time pressure, 1 machine, you can just stagger it over 12 months. Yeah. What I found is I wanted to start with 1. I was really enjoying it. I found it was helping me, but I just didn't get the capacity. So I bought a second one after 3 months. I think I bought mine late last year. Then I picked up 1 just before I went to Adepticon. So,
but you're worse than I am. I waited at least 7 months before I bought my second one.
Nah, and look, I haven't, and I'd like to get a third one, but I'd like the bigger one like Anthony has, so I can do things at a much bigger scale or with quicker resources. But I would need for that, So, question mark.
Sweet.
Questions.
We got some of the viewer questions. You've answered some of them, like Ryan Price's one, which is what printers are you using? I think you guys have both answered that.
Yeah,
pretty
so
well.
I've got the Creality Ender 3 Pro. So I have two of those Creality 3 Ender Pros. So that comes from China. I know some people in the community believe there's a website that is not legit. I don't know if that's true or not, but all my advice would be is to pay through PayPal so you get your insurance. But you can buy them off eBay. You can buy them from Amazon. You can buy all this stuff from like Office Works. They're around. They're around. So
there's a lot of places that you can get them from. Yeah.
But,
I have a Reality Ender 3, just the regular. I have a Reality CR10S, and then I have a Reality CR10S Pro.
Liam, I'm going to throw up a question from the chat.
I was about to say, like, this one here is an interesting question. So this SGT Def 1942 says, curious to hear all three hosts' opinion on people 3D printing models for their armies. Definitely some dodgy people printing extra models instead of buying them. But he also added in to clarify, I think it's fine to say buy 3 kits of the unit, but then 3D print some of the alternative models for them. I don't think it's fine to buy 1 kit and 3D print 3. Now, I know Anthony knows, but I'm going to rage about this question. So I'm going to let you guys answer this first. So let our guest go first. But yeah.
My honest opinion is if you enjoy playing a game, you're going to need to support that company that produces that game, or there will not be a game. I do not believe in printing something that is directly sold by the company. So, like, they sell some terrain, but and I know there's some people that have ripped off some of their files and put them on sites for free. I will not print that file because I do not believe that's right. I saw on one of the Age of Sigmar Facebook groups a guy directly ripping off and printing Sylvaneth Wildwoods, and I messaged him privately. So I wasn't going to call him out in a public forum because that's but I messaged him privately and I said, dude, I would highly recommend you not do that. That is very shady in my opinion. And also part of that model you're using is a printable scenery model, which I'm positive you don't have a license to do that because they don't give people license to modify their files like that. So I really highly recommend you don't do that. So I am totally against it personally.
Yeah.
Cool.
Look, look, it depends on, so I think to Anthony's point, I agree. Because I've seen, like I've actually shared with Anthony a few times, we've had a laugh that on Thingiverse, there's a Loon Shrine ripoff. There is a Shattered Dominion ripoff. There is Sisters of Battle, and there's a whole bunch, these are Clan Rat ripoffs. Now, in that world, I definitely haven't printed or I won't print that. I think 100% correct. If we don't want to go down a route where Games Workshop's not investing in our community, and, many people claim that Age of Sigmar happened because Warhammer Fantasy wasn't selling. They claim that Tomb Kings died because they weren't selling in 8th edition. Obviously, there's trademark stuff as well, but if you want your game to live and you want it to grow, you need to invest. So I would highly recommend you don't do that. I'm not comfortable with that. But in saying that, there are other cool stuff that maybe, like a perfect example where this is important to me is I've seen some people put up Warhammer Quest models. Now, I'm not talking about the last edition. I'm talking about the 1990s edition. Yes. And I do have an original copy of Warhammer Quest. But if I want those old zombies, if I want that old gargoyle, and I just can't buy them anymore, I physically cannot buy them, I don't see a problem with that. It's long out of production, yes. And I'm not profiting from that. So that's kind of where I would go. Otherwise, I have printed some things off for my bases. I was looking for something maybe I was looking at converting my Orion to have a really big horn. I was using like Magnus the Red, and I can't find a big horn to replicate Orion's horn. So I can go out and find a horn. But would I print a full model and put it on the tabletop? Probably not at this stage. But in 5 to 10 years' time, Games Workshop might start selling their STLs. It's definitely the way that the future is going in regards to printing, and it's becoming more common. Yeah. That's where I'm at with that.
Yeah. I'm going to be real with you. It's a big fat no to me. Like, just straight up. Like, as a guy who... Like, I like the stuff that you guys print out because it's just different and they are designed to be printed. If that makes sense, like there's no one actually like producing it in a factory. If that makes sense, like that's when I think that's cool with 3D printing because like it's someone who's designed it and they just go, cool, just print it if you want. And yeah, sometimes there might be like a sale transaction, but when it comes to printing models, like from GW or anything like that, I think it's pretty much, in my opinion, this is not the hobby for you then if you have to go into printing or ripping off a company. If that makes sense, the whole point of a hobby is you invest time and money into it. And if you're trying to cut the money part of it, then it's not really a hobby. You're just being lazy, if that makes sense.
In saying that, though, like I watched Tristan Gray yesterday talk to Mr. Mephisto about the Tomb Kings and his love of the Tomb Kings, and it's becoming harder and harder for him to find Tomb Kings models. Now, that's a long out of production series. And the only people he'd be impacting is the likes of eBay, who are charging exorbitant prices for Tomb Kings. So would I have an issue with Tristan printing that? No, I would not.
Yeah, like if something's out of production, sure.
A long time,
but I do know Tristan, right, is a true hobbyist and he's a fucking amazing converter.
Oh, I've challenged him. I've challenged him privately to get on the new kits and make it his own.
Yeah.
I have challenged him.
Yeah, like when it comes to this kind of stuff, like I did remember reading an article that a guy won a 40K tournament from a 3D printed Custodes army. Whoa. And I'm not going to lie, I wanted to vomit and slam my laptop on the ground because I thought it was that disgusting.
So 3 quick points on this. One, on that army and that article, if he had painted that tank that was 3D printed, you would have never known it wasn't an original, to be honest. His mistake was not painting it. And that's why it gets into you could technically use it. I don't believe in it. One thing is, like you mentioned, Loon Shrine models. Like printable scenery has a moon shrine, but it's not the Loon Shrine, and it does not look like the GW Loon Shrine. And I'm fine with printing that as a generic piece of terrain on the table, but not to supplement buying my Loon Shrine for my army.
Yes.
The other thing is, just real quick, in my opinion, it's the same as an artist. An artist sculpted those figures, and GW paid that artist to sculpt them, whether they paid them pennies or millions. That's not the point. The artist sculpted those and got paid to do that, and you're directly screwing that person by then knocking it off. And I won't do that.
Yeah. And like, it's just the thing is like, if like most of the money that GW makes is from models and the hobby side of it, like it's actually like if you look at their sales and stuff, I think they mainly make most of the money off paints and stuff, and then like models a bit. But if you don't buy those models, as you said, like you're not supporting the game, and if they're not seeing sales in that game, being like, oh, why isn't Age of Sigmar doing well? Like, what will stop them to be like, okay, cool, we're going to shut down this game system because it's not selling?
Yeah,
and like if you're printing models to cut that, you're literally telling GW being like, oh, I don't really give a crap. I'm just going to go do my own thing. I'm going to go play Ninth Age. That's pretty much what you're saying.
Yeah. So support the business that supports you. I think there's a lot of gray here. It's not can you, it's should you. So if you should you do it? Should I print off a Loon Shrine and replicate that as my Legion's terrain? Probably not. No. Could you? Yeah, you could. You could. It's absolutely. Mm-hmm. If you are at a tournament, they may actually deny you using it because it's not the full model. In saying that as well, I've seen some really nice reproduction of like the rhinos, the Space Marine rhino. Now with a resin printer, it's probably very hard for you to tell the quality. In fact, you could almost not tell the difference. But it comes down to should you do it, and the answer is no if you're really supporting the game. But let's move on. I think
conversion bits. Conversion bits, I'm all about. One little piece here there, please go enjoy.
Yeah. It's a deep rabbit hole. Let's not go going too much.
Yeah.
Now, another question we got asked on the live chat was whether or not would you suggest learning how to create your own templates for modular terrain, something like the panels on some GW kits?
Again, if you're talking about, that's something I would want to do is learn how to create my own designs. And while you can take inspiration from, the GW kits, I wouldn't want to design anything exactly like theirs, but I do want to learn eventually how to design my own buildings that I could print and maybe potentially have my own side business of my own selling some of my own files or do a Kickstarter of my own later on.
Yeah. I wouldn't be interested. I'm happy just printing other people's pieces off. Like they're beautiful. They do it better than I do.
Yeah.
I would much rather spend my money on Kickstarters and Patreons and get the masters creating beautiful pieces. But yeah.
But you could be a master yourself.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
There you go.
So, a couple of questions from the Tomb King lover himself, Tristan Gray. What sort of projects do you suggest a complete ludite like myself would take on and have done? So, like, what kind of project should he start off with printing, I think is what he's asking.
I mean, really start anywhere. Find a file that interests you, and from there, start printing that. And again, whether that be take it to the local library or something, or you buy yourself something like an Ender, which is, again, an affordable option to get into the hobby. But start with find a file that interests you first that you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would suggest two really quick wins. There's a whole bunch of really cool combat gauges on Thingiverse, and there's like Stormcast logos and Nagash logos, and there's tokens for cool things like Warcry. So there's some really cool tokens. Something that I recently printed off that was created by a New Zealand AOS community member was tokens for the new terrain table. So nullification and commanding. So right now there's no resources out there to label that. I used Ben Curry's dice for the table A, but I was able to quickly, in a matter of half an hour to an hour, print off new tokens for table B. So that was and took almost no time. It was super easy to do, cost very little in regards to resources. So that's a good project to start with, and then build up your confidence in more complicated, more timely kind of pieces. But combat gauges are like 20 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yeah,
not long.
Yeah, they're quick and they're satisfying when they're done. They really
they're useful. You need so many combat gauges, like
100%.
Okay. Now, another question you asked, but I think you guys already answered this. It was about scaling can be an issue. How do you know what size to print? I think you guys kind of answered that earlier on, but is there like a little trick? Like, is there something that's in the file?
Well, most everything is built on 28 millimeter scale. And if you do a little research, you can find out that 28 millimeter to 32 millimeter is about 14% up in scaling. And in your actual slicer, the software that you use to print a file, to convert it to the G code that the printer actually prints, you literally can just click on the file and then go, okay, I want this at 114%. I usually scale up to 110%, which is like 30 millimeter scale. Just because I can always remember just add 10%. But I did do a lot of stuff at 114% originally, and even some files, because some people, I backed one Kickstarter and the sizing was kind of all over the place. So I've scaled some stuff up 120%, or some, they made some statues, but I wanted them giant. So I scaled it up to 300%.
Okay.
So there's free software that we all use. It's very common, called Cura, Cura.
We all.
I said common. Not everybody. I think it's common. But there's paid software and there's other software. But Cura is one of the most popular softwares out there. Now, how do you work this out, Liam? So it's got a measurement in there, so it can tell you the width and the height and the depth of the model in centimeters or inches. So you can quickly work out from a scale point of view, is this the right scale or what I want? I always scale mine up 20%. It's just a personal preference. Again, Sigmar is a big game and I want it to feel big. But in saying that as well, I printed off a whole bunch of Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Let's say the like stalagmite and stalactite type, cavernous stuff. For my Moon Clan, in Dungeons and Dragons, it's only like really small, but I want it big. So I've scaled it 160 to 200%. So I think a part of it comes down to what you're striving for. But yeah, on average, 10 to 20% is the sweet spot.
Another good resource, just real quick, is Printable Scenery has on their site, you can download for free a file for Sid the Scaler. He's a figurine that downloads at 28 millimeter scale. And then so you can pop that onto your bed next to your model, and it will show you, well, he looks, kind of small, or that doorway looks kind of small for him at 28 millimeter if he was 32 millimeter. So you can appropriately scale your terrain off of that. It's a great little tool I've used.
Okay.
Liam, just jumping really quickly, there's a question I want to pull up from the chat, which was about what tools are we printing any tools? So I've also printed off a bunch of wound trackers. Not wound trackers. It's a little box kind of chart kind of thing where I can use dice to track command points and objective points. There's some fate dice type little things, so I can kind of pull my little fate dices. Warcry, there's some cool ones for Warcry as well.
So much for Warcry.
So there's heaps of like point trackers and tools like that too for in-game use. So there's heaps of stuff. Type in Sigmar, type in Warhammer, type in a bunch of different keywords, Warcry, and it just comes up with so much cool stuff. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff. Cool, good question, Liam. Sorry, I'm sure you got more questions you want to ask.
I got a couple left. This one's really good from Aaron Bastian.
Shout out to Bosso.
Do you guys ever miss doing conventional terrain building, except for the painting? 3D printing terrain seems a sterile process. Does it provide the same satisfaction as melting foam and hairdryer, or sanding a surface smeared with PVC glue and water?
Who says you don't have to do both?
Yeah, I was about to say, I've seen both of you guys, I'm pretty sure, do this. Like, you add bases to your prints.
Yes. So to more set it in the scene, I think it needs a base. And for it to actually be playable on, because a building is not going to provide cover, and you still want something to provide cover on some of these things. So having a base or like a ruined windmill or a water mill, the nice pond that the wheel is in, with some resin there. Also, I find certain things, in my opinion, aren't worth printing because the time investment in printing it is not worth it. Like if I want to do a rock outcropping or a large hill or something like that, it's not worth printing. It'll take me 20 hours and I can build it in foam in 10 minutes. Yeah. It's not worth it. Craters even, unless I'm doing something special around the crater, it's not worth it to me. I can build the crater so much easier and faster the conventional way. So there's no reason why you can't do both.
Yeah, I do. I still do both. I guess it comes down to what you're trying to strive for and the investment in time. And, I could 3D print like little stone henges. It's not really worth it. It's not really worth it. I could be spending more time on super detailed, intricate things like, this chaos tower you can see behind me. This elven library. There's all these cool stuff that is just like a time trade-off. That's much more worth my time.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, sick. And then, is there any cleanup and trimming to do when it comes to printing? So is there how does the cleaning compare to working with resin models? Like, how we have to wash them and stuff? So
like Forge World kind of resin?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're talking resin printing with like a resin printer because you're printing miniatures, you have to UV cure it and wash it in acetone and all this other stuff. In what we're doing with terrain, it's different. You don't actually have to wash, in my opinion, and Anthony might do something else, but you don't actually have to wash it before you prime it. Cleanup, now there is some cleanup. Like you would clean up mold lines on a model. You will get what are commonly referred to as like a zipper line on a 3D printed, where it starts and stops in the same point each time. So it stacks a little dot from where it starts. Or sometimes you'll get, if it's crossing a large span, you'll get a little bit of stringing that you can just take a hairdryer or heat gun, just a quick pass over, and it'll melt that away. Depending on the overhang of something, you'll get a little nodule of filament here or there that you just take an X-Acto and knock off. So there's a little bit of cleanup still, but not like the washing kind of thing or anything like that.
Okay.
No,
cool.
There's very little. I print my things with a skirt. which basically means when the nozzle comes down for the first time, it creates like a little a protection barrier around it, and it helps with the anti-slip. So that's another small little piece as well. I don't know, Anthony, if you do that. But
this has got a skirt on it here, so it just sits on it.
Yeah.
There you go. So this goes down, and then this will actually pull off in the end, and that'll be because I'm not great at skirts, I'll be honest. That's the only machine I print with a skirt on is the Ender, because I'm not the greatest with my Ender, I'll be honest. It fight, but that's because I put a magnetic bed on it for doing certain things, and it's a little bit unlevel in certain spots. So I do a skirt on that, which makes adhering things a lot better. But yeah, so you get a little bit of cleanup time, but again, it's no different than cleaning up a plastic model. Just an X-Acto knife and a quick, and you're good to go, and then hit it with a primer.
Yeah, couple of questions I'm going to pull up from the chat. I think there's some good ones there. So Jonathan, we kind of answered, just in case you've jumped in late, where are good places to download STLs from. So certainly there is Thingiverse, which is a free website. Enjoy it to your heart's content. You have things like Kickstarter. Kickstarter is a wonderful place to get a lot of files at a very cheap price. One that launched just the other day is called EC3D. Put up a Winterdale one, which is a very frost kind of reminds me very Beast Claw Raider kind of feel, but it's actually drawn from inspiration from Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of cool stories. So it was like $30 Australian, and I'm getting all this terrain, very cool. There are places like Printable Scenery who not only do Kickstarters, but they also sell their files post the event. So places like Printable Sceneries is amazing. They've got, dwarf themed, elf themed, ancient stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff.
And 40K stuff up the wazoo too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So obviously we're a Sigmar show, but yes, definitely there's 40K stuff. There's skirmish stuff, like Batman stuff and bolt action stuff. And then the last thing is I'd probably call out is there are places like Patreon where people like 3D Hexes. There's a lot of cool guys out there who for a couple of dollars a month will provide you a bunch of terrain that in a month or two later they might sell individually. But you probably find that the $5 at Patreon goes a long way as opposed to buying an individual file, which might cost $5 anyway. So that's some nice places.
Sick.
Another question. Do you want to read this one out?
Are there any downsides of printing your own terrain? There have been a lot of discussion on the pros. What are the cons?
The cons, you can print a lot more than you can paint sometimes, and you start wanting more and more printers because you find more and more files. Other than that, I can't see of any cons to 3D printing terrain personally.
Yeah. My wife has been a con.
No, I couldn't find. She can find plenty.
She won't leave me. No. In all seriousness, my wife has been very supportive, and she has been great. I guess and I mentioned the wife is because it was the initial outlay to buy these machines were quite significant. This is $500 potentially. If you're something like Anthony, you could be spending more. Now that is my hobby. That's a new army. That could be a brand new army for me in Sigmar or whatever I'm playing. So depending what your disposable income's like, do you have that money to trade off? That's probably the biggest con. I think while that is a con, and in the moment when my machine doesn't work, I want to cry, I want to punch it, I want to throw it away, I get upset, but that's such a 1% in my life. The joy that I get, and I'll give you an example of a joy. I've recently sponsored the Runax Wargaming, which is a Teams event happening in November in Australia, and I'm donating a table worth of terrain for Gabe. That's something and I've offered that to Measured Gaming for Bush Bonanza next year, and I'm going to start offering that to other Australian and maybe even New Zealand events. Who may not be able to get Games Workshop sponsorship, or the struggles of getting terrain is quite hard. So if you are in Australia and you do want some terrain, I will sponsor your event, and that's something that I'm able to give back for nothing. Really, it's a couple of dollars, and I'm able to help the community have better tables to play on,
I've
whether I'm
said
attending or not.
I've said the same thing to quite a few TOs here or there. If anybody asks me, I'm usually willing to donate a centerpiece of terrain for a table or two here or there, which can go a long way to making tables look better. All people have to do is ask. And like I said, I'm pretty generous with my printing in general because I like seeing good tables, and I think it enriches the hobby.
Yeah.
Tristan's asked how much would it cost. I think if I was to charge as a business, maybe $200.
Because that's to cover time. Was it?
Yeah,
time?
if I was a business, and I was charging, look, it's probably half the price of what you'd pay at a retailer, but yeah,
you've got cooler models.
yeah. So like it's probably about $250 if you were to say, Anthony, I want to buy a table off you. But so being able to give back or being able to create tokens and movement trays and other gaming accessories, and over time, someone asked me, like Ben Spinetti asked me about, he wanted to create some boardwalks for his Deepkin army, like for some terrain. Now he could either build them with matchsticks, but like I can do simple things like that as well at no cost. So
yeah. Spinetti, just letting anyone know, if anyone knows who Spinetti is, hashtag Shark Meta, he's made a sushi bar out of GW terrain.
That's awesome.
He made a sushi bar, and the octopus guy from Lotan?
Mm-hmm.
He's the chef.
That's amazing.
That is
amazing. This.
So he's
I need pictures of this.
He showed me work in progress, and I was like, "You've actually made a sushi bar." And I said, "One, I'm really worried about you." He goes, "Why?" And I said, "The amount of spare time you have to make a sushi bar out of GW terrain is ridiculous."
Yeah. And by the way, we're not here to say don't buy GW terrain. Please do.
No.
That is not what we're saying here. But instead of filling your table up with what I often see, which is only Azerite ruins and only realm gates, because they're the cheapest things you can fill your table with, you're able to create diversity and interesting themes by supplementing it or having a combination. I still have so much GW terrain, and I will still buy GW terrain. It's just that instead of having the same stuff constantly, I'm able to do other things as well.
Just quickly, their new terrain kits are beautiful. Straight out of the back.
Oh God, yeah. And that's the biggest thing. Please buy their terrain. They make some amazing kits, but I don't want to see every table look the same is my thing. So like you were saying, diversity. I want to sparse their stuff in with mine because they do have amazing stuff, but I just want more stuff than just the same table over and over and over again. I want unique experiences.
3D Hexes said, half seriously, you probably don't want to own a 3D printer if you're a cat person and you have 6 cats. Cool.
Well, first off, if you're a cat person, you're the wrong person. Dogs are the best. Preferably big heads, short nosed dogs.
Shout out to the Staffies and the doggos of the world.
Yes. Yep. I had to put down my one pit. And
I'm so not happy right now.
That's all right.
And we just adopted another one.
But actually, that raises a really good point. So if you do have a cat, or maybe you live in an area where the temperature does drop, or you have, a space that, is not a consistent environment, you can buy or even create little cases that go around it, like a little enclosure that allows you to keep the same temperature, maybe keeps your cat out of it, or your children away from it.
I was just about to say, my 4-year-old runs to my printers all the time to see what's on there that she might want to touch. And I no.
But my wife actually comes in often and wants to. She's actually generally curious to see what I'm printing, and she'll come in and watch it, which is really cool because it's a very interesting mechanic that something's being created in front of your eyes.
Every time when I've come over, Anthony, your printers are always going on, and I'm always intrigued on what the hell you're printing. It's insane.
My wife hates my hobby. She could care less about any of it. But she, even when I finish a print and I put it on my turntable to shoot a small video for Twitter, she's always like, wow, that's pretty cool. Oh, that's a cool piece. Like, she always has to look at it because it's amazing of the stuff you can print.
Yeah. Jonathan asked,
filament breads?
Yeah, what filament? So being Australian based, I use PLA Plus. That is the type of material. The business that I prefer to do business with is a company called 3D Phillies. And they're, I think, a Melbourne-based company. Their prices are very good. Their product is very good. Overall, I'm very happy with them, and I've probably spent $500 this year already on filament with those guys. So that would be my Australian recommendation. Anthony, you're
for the US, yeah, I prefer in the US a company called Ziltech. They're based out of Texas. It's an American-based company, small operation, but they put out good stuff. I've had nothing but great luck with their filaments, and the price is really good. For the quality that I get, like I said, their average is $13 a roll, and they always, like every 2-3 weeks, they're having a 12, 15, 19% off sale off of your order, so you can get it down to almost $10 a roll. And they just started doing, you can see there, that's a 5 kilogram roll, which is, let me tell you, it's cool up until the last kilogram, which is just wound too tight. It becomes a nightmare, and you have to figure out a whole new way, but that's all new. And they just released, which I just got 2 rolls in, rainbow filament, which I'm excited to print some stuff, and I've been waiting.
That's actually a really good point. So there are different colors that you can do these in. So I like to go with stock gray because it allows me to see detail and my primer. But I know, Anthony, you do some very interesting colors.
So I choose color. Everybody asks me, like, why do you do colors? And why is your building 3 different colors? Well, one, I choose colors because pretty much everything I print, just because people enjoy seeing it in the community, I take a small video of and put it up on Twitter. And the colored filaments show the detail on the small filming better than black and white do, and some grays. A lighter gray works good, but a darker gray, you lose a lot of the detail. So I like the colors. 2, I just like color. I mean, I just like color, so that's cool. And why do I have models that are 3 or 4 different colors? Because I have 3 printers going, and sometimes I'll have a different piece on each one. Or when a roll runs out, I'll switch to a different color to finish out that one. So it's all the same material.
You can get transparent ones. You can get wood filament as well. There's a lot of cool choices.
You can get into some exotic stuff. I actually have a roll down there that I'm going to use soon. It's a iron-based PLA, so it has some iron filings in the plastic to make it magnetic. So I'm going to print some movement trays that will be magnetic with my models. Which requires a little bit of tinkering with the machine, but I'm set up for doing that, so it's fine.
Okay, be cool.
So WS Soren, with the initial outlay being that high, at what point do you think the benefit for the printing of terrain outweighs the cost of buying it?
And the reason he asked is this part. I love it.
I'm asking because my mic would.
So the initial outlay can be a little bit expensive, but it doesn't have to be super expensive. Like, again, it depends on, I'll talk American dollars because I don't know the conversion for Australian, but like an Ender 3, if you don't get a Pro, regular Ender 3, you can pick up on Amazon right now with Prime shipping for about $180 US, shipped to you next day. Add in, if you talk to me, I will tell you buy 2 or 3 extra parts because you'll want to make these couple things right off the rip, in my opinion. And for $220 US, you can have a printer that's ready to go, buy your brand of filament. So spend another $10 to $15 for a single roll of filament, and you're good to go. I make that outlay one time though. And then, I'll be buying some files, but I will then own the digital file forever, and I can print it as many times as I want. So my, I don't know, $1,300, $1,500 in printers have probably printed, if you were to go buy terrain, $3,000 to $4,000 of terrain this year alone. Let alone what I've done last year and what I continue to do.
Yeah, I might actually just quickly flip to myself for a second. I'm going to show you some of the terrain that I literally have around myself. I haven't moved from my, but I've just grabbed a bunch of stuff that can show you what you can do. So, statue that I've got, this will be a scatter piece for Sydney GT. I think it's come up quite well.
That's sick.
I've made it this death skull. I know, Liam, you're painting a couple of these for me.
Let me just quickly grab how they turn out paint-wise.
Yeah, go grab yours. But I'm going to keep showing off some of the things that I've done recently. So this is like a death, like a skull piece, which is really cool.
Awesome.
That's a really cool piece that can be used for death or for chaos. A set of rib cages is a whole bunch of like monstrous type of rib cages that I've just put on. Bosso had asked about basing. Well, I've based it on a piece of MDF. Something that Ben Spinetti has painted for me is this Aztec kind of temple, which I think has come up really nice. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I've printed, and literally this is just what I've grabbed from around myself. There's my room is literally filled because of the GT. Obviously, that
looks
Chaos
awesome.
Castle.
So,
Let me just
because
bring up
when Anthony gave it to me, I was like, what the hell is this? This is like a stone statue kind of thing. Then I realized that this is actually ghostly spirits kind of thing. So they're actually like coming out of the ground. So on the tables, they will look like they're literally coming out of the ground.
That is awesome.
So there is so much cool stuff. So like, I guess the question is, how do you put an ROI on that?
Yeah. And can I say painting this makes me want to get a 3D printer or get Anthony to literally print stuff out for me, because you look at it and your imagination go wild on like what you can do painting wise with it. So for me, I feel like the 3D printing when it comes to painting, which is like my favorite part of the hobby, it just pushes you to the limits of imagination of what to do. So
if you're on Twitter, go ahead, Coach.
No, I was going to pull up the comment that Sergeant Death's put up as well. He goes, "I've painted one of those skull rocks for Anthony, and they're amazingly detailed considering they're painted." And I think this goes back to it. It's actually, when you primed it, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between a plastic resin or actually printed piece. Like they're actually quite good.
Yeah, printing has come a long way, and with the right layer height and the settings, once you're dialed into printing, which doesn't take as long as a lot of people think, just a couple prints to get yourself going, you can really make some nice stuff. What I was going to say is, if that looks right, if that is actually on everybody's screen, that's my Twitter handle. If you go to my Twitter, not that I'm plugging myself, but
plug.
It's not, because there's nothing to really plug. But if you go there and you want to see some printed stuff, I like I said, I put up a video probably once a week, twice a week of what I've printed, and I always have some GW models in there so that you can reference scale. So I mean, I've always got like a Stormcast and a Savage Orc in there, so you can see the size of the buildings rather than just out in space.
Yeah.
And once you get that kind of scale, and you just look at some of those that I put up recently, you can understand printing. It far outweighs what long term the initial outlay of cost, and it's a lot of fun.
I've just found a couple more pieces around me. So I've got this dwarven temple, which could be like a dwarven realm gate. This little fish temple. I love this piece. It's going to be on my Deepkin tables. And I also got like these monster like rib cages that'll be a more sea monster kind of ribs. And there are more pieces to go with that. But again, like your imagine just goes absolutely wild. If you're talking about immersion in wargaming or Dungeons and Dragons or in general miniature gaming, you play multiple systems, or maybe you play one system like me, which is Sigmar. It's a great hobby to be in. I call it a hobby because 3D printing I think is a hobby. I check all of my favorite Patreons and Kickstarters and websites to see what the latest ideas are. I can't wait to print off like these Beast Claw Raider type tables. I want to find Slanesh type things. I want to find stuff for the Realm of Light. There's so much cool stuff that I can't wait for my players to start playing on and taking great pictures, because they put all the effort and time into having beautiful armies. They've spent so much money to buy the models. I want them to have a great experience and have great pictures with models and terrain that supports their hobby. So that's why I'm very passionate about this.
Me too. At NashCon this year, we had, and if anybody, not just to plug him either, but if you go on YouTube or Twitch and check out The Honest Wargamer, they streamed the 5 games from NashCon Live, and each game had my terrain on stream. And like the first 2 games were the Elven terrain, and the whole table was Elven terrain. They did one with the Dwarven terrain, and the whole table is Dwarven terrain. They did one, it's all ruined terrain, and it just goes on and on. And I bought from Fat Matt, a water mat, and I'm doing a bunch of just what will be on sandy bases for, sea style terrain, Atlantean style. Like, you can have all these.
I just bought I bought 6 mats from Deep Cut for Sydney GT, and one of them is a beach, so it's like a little bit of a beach front, and then it goes into a bit of water. So that type of stuff. And my boy 3D Hex, who's just said Cities of Sigmar, that's going to be great for those medieval houses or castle forts. That he put up a Patreon poll the other day, and he asked, what should I print? And I harassed him and said Egyptian. I was thinking of my boy Tristan and Randy, the guys who want Egyptian terrain. But there's just lots of cool stuff. But anyway,
Egyptian stuff is awesome for Seraphim too.
I'm excited. I hope you guys feel the excitement. I'm literally the minute I get off here, I'm going back to put on those machines because I got a lot of printing to do.
Yeah, me too. And it just never ends. But I love it. It really is so satisfying and so much fun.
And big shout to my boy Blandy or Randy as well, who's a huge Tomb Kings player. But again, there's just so much variety.
There is.
Cool. I think we've got all the questions out. The last question I'm just gonna wrap up with, by the looks of it, is Jonathan's asked about avoiding filament lines and smoothing those prints. So we kind of touched on it a little bit. Anthony, do you want to tackle this one?
Yeah. I honestly don't believe you will ever completely get rid of layer lines, but you can mitigate them tremendously by changing the layer height that you print in. So FDM style printing, what we print in on our printers, it just puts layer on top of layer on top of layer of plastic, and you can adjust the height of each one of those layers. And the smaller you get, the tighter they're stacked, the less you'll see. And then using a high build primer that's designed for like an automotive high build sandable primer, or even a lot of people have good luck, and I have decent success with the Rust-Oleum camo primers that fills in a lot of that. But if you really need something even more, if you need something even more detailed and you want to make sure they're gone, you can use something like a liquid green stuff or a plastic putty or an acetone to smooth it out. There are ways to completely smooth it.
Yeah, agreed. And you can use you can also use like fine grit sandpaper to kind of grind it down a little bit, or as we've said, use a lighter to kind of pick up little pieces. But I think with the layer height, it's very hard to see, and it's also a trade-off. Like, if I'm doing a tournament, is it that important to have? It's very rare to see. But if I was doing my personal terrain and I've got all the time in the world, then it's fine.
Yeah. And once it's painted, I mean, even the small amount of layer lines you see, I have never had anybody complain about them. And Vince Venturella has, one of my pieces on his display board for his Slanesh, and one of them is actually the base for his Archeon Slanesh or whatever it was. So Oscar Lars just took one and put it on his display base at Nova, or that I printed for him. So if those world-class painters seem to make it work okay, I think you can make it look pretty dang good.
Yeah. And the last question I've got just from Twitter, which was from Overdrive Active, he had asked, is there any applications to assist or plugins that can help break up the model? So a lot of people who create models will actually, or files, will actually cut them up, or it's a term called splicing. So they'll cut up the model for a small printer or a large printer. So often that has already happened. However, there is software. I don't personally use it. I haven't found a need to splice just yet. Anthony, you might have one that allows you to cut up models or reduce things that you don't want if you want to go down that route.
I don't use it because I haven't had a need for it, because like you said, most of the people you're getting files from have pre-cut these files to make it very user-friendly and easy. There is one file, when I was talking about earlier, I was thinking about a resin printer. And because they are a small build volume, I did a little research into some programs that could cut up some files to make them fit on that resin printer. And there are some free ones out there. There's some pay ones, and all the research I did shows me that they're pretty easy to use also. So if that's something that you may need, it's not a concern that you should worry about. You can get that done relatively easy.
All right. Literally about to wrap it up because Jacob Berry's been in the chat doing shit talk, but he actually has a real question. So Jacob Berry
that's my boy, and that's what he does.
From shout out to the Rage of Sigmar crew, absolute kings of shit talk. My favorite, well, I'm their favorite dweller, which is always confuse the shit out of me at Adepticon. But I now understand and appreciate and respect and love them. But Jacob has asked, have you tried using Art Cloak Gloss Coat to even out the layers to kind of avoid those mold lines and seams?
I have not, but him and I were actually talking about this morning because I have a couple pieces I'm going to be printing for his co-host Joe Pagano for a display board for CanCon next year, 2020. He's coming out to
it would have been easier for me. I could have just printed it out and had it for him.
Honestly, I thought about that, but he needs it all paint. He wants it all painted and everything to match. He's got some stuff he's going to do. I don't want to spoil and say what it is, but there might be one thing I'm going to be printing over your shoulder in this shot right now that he wants me to print for his display board. And certain things take to 3D printing a little bit better. Some of those files can be a little bit weird with the way the points come up on some bone material, and you want them to be a little bit smoother. So I think with a lower layer height and then something like a gloss coat or gloss varnish, I think you can fill in some of those with it, just like you would a mold line in a model. So I think it will work. I have not tested it, but I do believe it will.
All right, I've got a quick question that Cameron King's just asked about, and I'm going to show off a piece to end it up in the show.
All right.
This bad boy.
There you go. Oh, fuck.
So it's called the Hell Spike, and as you can see, it is absolutely crazy big. That's one of my biggest pieces. I've got a couple of those. They'll be my centerpiece boards.
And imagine if you had a bigger printer. You could print bigger.
Yeah, maybe. But either way, that is probably my biggest piece to date, although those libraries are quite large. So either way, lots of cool big stuff, lots of cool small stuff, lots of accessories, lots of different things that you can print. I hope you are not as excited as Liam is right now. People in the chat think that he's held hostage. I think it's more jealousy of the amazingness that is 3D printing.
I am actually jealous, and also you got me out of bed like 10 hours early.
Oh my gosh, I got you out of bed for a 10 a.m. start. My gosh.
That's early for me. I'm a nocturnal. You know this. Honestly, I'm just amazed by how much knowledge you guys have, especially since I've known Magro for a while, and then he bought a 3D printer last year, and then all this information, I was like, what the hell? But yeah, it's insane. So, and I'm also really jealous, and I'm actually, right as we speak now, I'm actually shopping for 3D printers and also looking at things to print or ask Magro to print. Mag, I've already sent you 2 things.
I did. He's already sent me a really cool, almost like a dagger combat gauge for Warcry. So there's lots of cool stuff.
Yes.
But I don't want to use it for Warcry because it's 8 inches or 6 inches. And it's really good just to be oh, I'm movement 5 or something. So you just pull it out instead of getting your tape measure being
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. So yeah.
Look, there's heaps of cool stuff. Look, there's a lot of cool things. Some people have asked me in the chat, will I put up some links to some of these resources we've referred to? Absolutely. I'll go in and I'll grab some stuff like that video to set up your Ender 3, some of my favorite Patreons and Kickstarters and some websites. I think, to get started, there's a lot of cool places. I think part of the enjoyment is the exploration and finding things and getting involved in these Facebook groups as well. There are people sharing their latest works, people who are sharing what they've printed and their tips and tricks, and you got to get stuck. You can ask questions. I think it's a great time to be in the hobby. Find someone who has a 3D printer, go to a library, or hit up someone like myself or Anthony, or I'm sure there's plenty of people that we can help refer if you want to get started, but maybe you don't have the money just yet and you are like Liam and you just want to get someone print something for you.
Yeah, I literally actually don't have the room. I physically don't have the room. And the last time when I bought something like an airbrush, I threw it out the wall. So I feel like the 3D printer, if it breaks, I will throw it out the wall.
Yeah, don't do that. Not a good idea. Just throw that out there.
All right. So to wrap up the show, Anthony, you've mentioned where people can find you. Do you want to give any last quick shouts or anything you want to share?
No, just if you check my Twitter every now and then, you'll see some cool stuff printing, but that's about it. Thank you for having me on.
I highly recommend
Anytime.
that you follow Crazy Horse. It is one of my favorite Twitter handles because he's just sharing some cool stuff and inspiring me to do better at this. I'm like, man, why can't I do more like him? So it's almost like I'm chasing this drug. Jacob Berry, because he's happened to join the show, I'm going to give him a shout to the Rage of Sigmar. These guys are the best shit talkers in the game, but they also play really well. So. But you get there for the shit talks.
Jacob plays really well. Joe's not so great, but they are lovely guys. Don't let their podcast fool you. They're actually really sweet, generous, and fantastic guys to hang out with. And if you're ever at an event with them and want to party, they are where the party's at. I promise you.
Yeah. I'm scared for them coming to Australia. Also, shouts to Mr. Mephisto and Tristan as well, who did a really cool video yesterday. So lots of cool stuff happening. It's great. Liam, thanks for getting up at 10 o'clock in the morning to join us. It's always
you have no idea actually how hard it was to get out of bed.
Oh my God.
I literally woke up and I was like, oh, this is
the life of a young person with no commitments.
Yeah, right. If only the days.
I have work. And yesterday I got a 6 a.m. call time. I turned up and I was the only one there at 6 a.m. and I was fuming because
life is hard for Liam. He's really tough.
Well, that's
hard.
why he has cats, so he doesn't have to walk them like a dog in the morning.
As Jacob says,
stuff like that.
As Jacob says, I am the number one dweller. Even though I do not know that I was a dweller, but I'm a number one dweller.
And Anthony is the number one in Detroit. And 3D Hex, it's 4 o'clock. So thanks for joining. Guys, let's wrap this up. Anthony, you've got a tournament to run tomorrow. Liam, you've got to take photos of sexy women for your job. Please upgrade some more stuff on Insta.
The fuck?
You know, his Insta is off the charts. I love Liam's Insta. He needs to shoot more, put some more stuff up there. Guys, it's been a pleasure.
I'm just waiting for magazines to hurry up and publish my work so then I can do that for you. So yeah, that's why.
All right. And apologies to David, who's literally joining as we're wrapping up, but it's 2 hours of goodness that I'm sure you can pick up when the replay comes up in a matter of minutes. Guys, thank you very much for joining this show. I hope you found this useful. I hope you are interested in joining the 3D printing community. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. I will put some stuff in the channel below if you want to find some of these links that we are fans of, and I'm sure Anthony will send me some links as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm losing my voice. It's lunchtime. Guys, have a great rest of your week.
Take it easy. Peace.
Be good.